What if the biggest mistake in the history of football is the way we calculate greatness? What if, while you're busy counting goals, records, trophies, you're missing the one thing that decides everything? Before we go any further, take a second, like the video, subscribe to the channel, because what you're about to hear is not another Messi versus Ronaldo debate. This is a confession, a rare one, from a man who built dynasties, crossed legends, and never spoke without weight. Because when Sir Alex Ferguson finally broke his silence about Messi and Ronaldo, he didn't pick sides. He questioned the entire way we understand football, and once you hear his logic, you'll never look at goals the same way again. To understand why these words matter so much, you need to understand who is speaking. Sir Alex Ferguson is not a YouTube pundit. He's not a former player chasing relevance. He is the architect of one of the most dominant eras football has ever known. Over nearly 3 decades at Manchester United, Ferguson faced every type of genius: explosive finishers, elegant players, desperate winners. He coached Ballon d'Or winners, he dismantled great teams, he built systems that outlasted stars. And during the Messi-Ronaldo era, while the world split into camps, Ferguson stayed silent. Meanwhile, the numbers exploded. Messi at 38, still at the top of the charts, still dictating matches with 71 goal contributions in a single season across competitions. Cristiano Ronaldo, season after season, hitting 50, sometimes 60 goals, redefining physical longevity and obsession with the scoreboard. So here's the question nobody wanted to ask. If football were only about numbers, why did Ferguson hesitate to reduce greatness to goals? And what exactly did he see that most of us didn't? The confession didn't come in a press conference. There was no dramatic headline, no viral clip prepared in advance. It was a pause, almost accidental, during a conversation about footballing legacy. When Ferguson was asked about modern greatness, about whether today's stars would survive in past eras, he paused. Not the pause of hesitation, but the pause of someone choosing words carefully. And then he shifted the conversation away from goals, trophies, numbers. He talked about control, about fear, about moments when an entire bench goes quiet because one player touches the ball. That's where the comparison became inevitable. On one side, Cristiano Ronaldo, the ultimate product of obsession, a player who turns chances into goals, pressure into fuel, and the goal chart into a personal battlefield. When Ronaldo is on the pitch, defenders think about one thing: the finish. On the other, Lionel Messi, a different kind of threat. One that doesn't announce itself, one that doesn't wait for the ball, one that changes the geometry of the game before a goal is ever scored. Ferguson didn't say one was better, but he made one thing clear. One player attacks the outcome, the other attacks the game, and for a manager, those are not the same thing. When Ferguson said people were counting goals and missing what decides history, he wasn't being poetic. He was being brutally practical. For him, the decisive factor was control. Not possession, not statistics. Control over fear. He explained it in a way only a manager could. Some players wait for the game to give them moments. Others take moments and force the game to adapt around them. This is where his logic became uncomfortable, because goals, as spectacular as they are, usually arrive at the end of a sequence. They are conclusions, but domination happens before the goal. Messi's presence changes where defenders stand. It changes when midfielders press. It changes how a fullback hesitates for half a second, and half a second at elite level is an eternity. Ferguson described it as silent authority. No gestures, no demands, no chest pounding, just the constant feeling that the match is slipping out of your hands. Ronaldo, by contrast, represents visible danger. You see it coming, you prepare, you double up, you block, you survive, until you don't. And here's the uncomfortable truth Ferguson pointed out. As a defender, you fear conceding a goal. As a manager, you fear losing control of the game. One fear is the scoreline, the other is the collapse of the match itself. And history, Ferguson insisted, remembers the second one longer. This is where Ferguson's view stops sounding like an opinion and starts sounding like a pattern. Football has always remembered scorers, but it has also remembered controllers. Think of the players managers feared most, not for one action, but for everything they disrupted. Johan Cruyff didn't just score, he rearranged space. Xavi didn't just pass, he suffocated opponents with rhythm. Zinedine Zidane didn't chase numbers, he imposed them. Ferguson had faced these archetypes before. He recognized the pattern instantly. Great scorers break records. Great controllers break systems. That's why, in Ferguson's eyes, Messi fits into a lineage that transcends eras. He forces teams out of position without touching the ball. He creates panic through inevitability. Ronaldo, by contrast, belongs to a different historical category. The apex predator, the ultimate finisher, the man who survives eras by adapting his body, his positioning, his role. History respects that, but it fears something else more. Managers can design schemes to limit shots. They can sacrifice players to block zones. They can accept pressure. What they cannot plan for is a player who quietly wins the pulse of the game. That's why Ferguson never reduced greatness to goals, because history doesn't belong only to those who finish actions, but to those who decide how the game is played. This is where Ferguson's confession becomes almost uncomfortable for modern football, because today everything is measured. Heat maps, expected goals, touches in the box, passes per game. Modern fans read statistics the way managers once read the match. And yet, Ferguson's warning cuts straight through this obsession. Data tells you what happened. It rarely explains why everyone panicked before it happened. Messi's influence often appears invisible in the charts. A defender takes 2 steps back instead of pressing. A midfielder refuses to leave his zone. A backline drops 5 meters deeper without instruction. Those decisions don't count as assists. They aren't logged as key passes. But they decide matches before the final ball is played. Ronaldo, on the other hand, dominates the data world. His numbers are undeniable. His impact explodes in decisive moments. And in a football economy built on signals and results, that is powerful. But Ferguson's point was never about choosing sides. It was about perspective. If football is reduced to outcomes, Ronaldo's case is overwhelming. If football is understood as a living system, Messi becomes harder to measure and harder to replace. And that's why this debate refuses to die. Because one fits perfectly into the data era, the other exposes its limits. So maybe Sir Alex Ferguson didn't end the Messi-Ronaldo debate. Maybe he made it deeper and more uncomfortable. Because once you stop counting goals and start watching control, football changes shape. One player conquers scoreboards, the other conquers games. And history. History remembers both, but not in the same way. Now the question is yours. Does greatness belong to the man who finishes the story, or to the one who writes it before anyone else touches the ball? Tell us what you think in the comments. Like the video, share it with someone who still believes football is only about goals, and subscribe, because the next silence that breaks might change everything.